killer!
What's up, everybody out there in YouTube land? Wrath2501 here. Alright guys, time for another ranking of weapons in MvM. This is Scout. Alright, this is by WheezyTF2. So this one's for Rocker, because Rocker likes to play Scout, especially in MvM. Alright, so let's see what he's got, how he rates the weapons. So let's go.
Are Scout's best and worst weapons in MvM? Well, today we're going to answer that question in the
Yeah, of
form
course,
of
they
a
got the
tier
Sonic
list,
music
with
for this
D tier
one.
being the worst weapons and S tier being the best. Now, I have a few rules for this list. Number 1, this is an MvM tier list, specifically for 2 cities. Other tours and other game modes were not considered in the making of this video. Number 2,
Okay.
this tier list is based off the perspective of a solo queuing player who will encounter teams at a variety of different skill levels. Number 3, weapons will be ranked on their utility within their respective weapon slots and not on Scout as a whole. So yes, scatterguns will be in the same tier as melee weapons. No, this does not mean they're equally as good as each other. And of course,
Okay.
this is just my opinion from the experience I personally have in MvM. Let's begin.
D tier.
The bat is a weapon with 0 use. It has 0 utility whatsoever and can't even be upgraded to do more base damage.
Oh,
a
really?
scattergun is always a better option, even if you're out of ammo. You're better off running away and getting more than whacking a giant with a 35 damage swing. To put it simply,
God.
bleed damage just isn't good in MvM. It's fine in casual because 8 DPS is a decent chunk of damage relative to your scattergun, and the effect forces retreats. But in a game mode with fully upgraded rocket launchers and miniguns and sniper rifles and sentry guns attacking robots with thousands of health, 8 DPS is almost
Don't mean
nothing in the grand scheme of things. For some reason, Valve also opted to not give this weapon the Mark for Death upgrade like the Sandman. I don't know why, but it's 1 buff away from being pretty good.
Boston
Same concept,
Basher.
bleed damage just doesn't cut it in MvM.
And you hit
I know
yourself.
some people will say, oh, but it can build Uber. But the medic usually has no shortage of heal targets when in the middle of a fight, and
True.
even with the small breaks during each wave, the scout gets overhealed from the money he collects. So
Yep.
in order to help the medic build Uber faster, you have to completely invalidate one of your class's best mechanics in order to make it happen. It's
Good point.
just not
Good
worth
point.
it.
D tier. The sun on the
Sun
stick.
on a stick is just way too situational. The crit damage only comes into play when you have a Pyro or a Hua Long Heater Heavy on your team, and even then at max swing speed, your scattergun will still do more damage. If you could upgrade the base damage, I think it'd be pretty good, but you can't do that, so the Sun Nipple just isn't very good.
Sun nipple? Dude.
Alright,
Dude.
I may be going out on a limb here because the Candy Cane might actually be pretty good. If you're
What?
a damage scout who's constantly killing shit and spawning a bunch of small medkits for your team, that seems like it'd be useful to me. But the vast majority of those kills will be deep in the front lines and will only ever be picked up by a Pyro, a Spy, or the Scout himself. You also usually have a medic, a dispenser, and a medium health kit close by that all act as better, more safe forms of healing. So
Good
the Candy
point.
Cane just kind of becomes redundant. There's also the fact you take 25% more damage from explosives, so it makes you much more squishy on waves with lots of soldiers and demos.
And with a class
I think
that's already
it's probably
squishy.
the best melee in D tier, but D tier nonetheless. I'm
Oh,
lumping
all
all the
pistols.
pistols together because they all suffer from the exact same fundamental problem. When you look at Scout's responsibilities in MvM, his job is to do damage, collect money, and use his utility abilities.
Mostly
the
collect
commonality
money.
between all of them is that they're all done at close range. So the long range option for Scout, why would you ever need to use it? And yeah, I know the Winger has increased jump height, which does make it the best of the 3, but overall, I just think it's too limited in its benefits and doesn't make it worth using at all. Oh,
Oh.
look, it's another bleed weapon. Yeah, I already went over why bleed is trash in MvM, but I will say that the base damage of the cleaver isn't necessarily terrible, but the fact it's on cooldown absolutely destroys any chance of it being useful. If you could spam it, maybe it wouldn't be too terrible, but as it stands right now,
Dude, that'd be
it's
weird.
really bad. The Atomizer is Scout's best non-mark for death melee weapon, and you'll actually find it used a little bit more at high level because the mark for death effect scales negatively with player skill, but because this is a solo queue tier list, I'm putting it in C tier. This item makes Scout far more mobile and makes it so you don't have to buy as much jump height to make some of the most common jumps. But it just doesn't have the utility that the Mark for Death items have, so that's why I have to put it this low.
Ah.
The
Critical.
Criticola makes your damage capabilities far higher. You don't have to be in range of the soldier's buff banner, which is good because Scout is normally too far to get the effect, so this gives Scout a viable alternative for getting mini crits. But the fact you have to stay still while drinking it, the fact you're marked for death when using it, and the fact that it's usually obsolete on giants because you'll be marking them anyways, it's not nearly as useful as you would think. And yes, while it is good on tanks, that's actually the one time you will be in range of a soldier's buff banner. I just think that there are too many redundancies in MvM's gameplay to make it all that viable.
Bonk.
The bonk essentially acts as a free Uber canteen every 20 seconds, but with the penalty of being slowed down afterwards proportional to the amount of damage you avoided. It does have its moments, specifically on Hamlet Wave 2 with the 20 crit soldiers. That part is not fun, but as you get better at MvM, the more you learn how to position yourself safely, and the more you memorize the patterns of robots spawning relative to each wave, this makes the bonk become less and less impactful as time goes on.
So good for beginners, but not so good once you know the
This
thing.
may come as a surprise to a lot of newer MvM players because on paper the Force of Nature is pretty good. It does good damage, it's good at tank busting, it enhances the scout's mobility with an on-demand triple jump. Why is this in C tier? Well, the knockback. It knocks small robots so far away at close range, it's basically a one-shot scattergun since you'll never be able to follow up with your second one. But the biggest issue I see is when you're dealing with giants. By knocking the giants up, you make your demo sticky traps do less damage, you make your heavy have to aim upwards to hit all of his bullets, obstructing his field of view, and I don't think I need to mention how much your sniper will just absolutely love you constantly messing with his aim. So, while the Force of Nature seems pretty decent, it ends up hurting your team in the long run.
We just gotta know when to use it.
This one might also come as a surprise, because in theory it's a walking contradiction to everything Scout wants to do. You have a boost meter which goes down every time you take damage or double jump, both of which have no shortage of happening in MvM. However, I actually find you'll be holding on to your boost much more than you would think by just getting a couple of those meat shots in on the last few robots of a small pack. This allows Scout to go insanely fast, and while it doesn't stack with the movement speed upgrade, it makes it so that on earlier waves you don't really need to buy that upgrade. The biggest problem is that goddamn 33% clip reduction. Only having 4 shots in the clip nerfs your damage by so much that all the credits you have on not buying speed upgrades go to just making it on par with the other scatterguns in terms of damage. So that's why it's in C tier.
Well, that will make so much sense.
In my opinion, the backscatter is the most underwhelming scattergun in the game. Like the Babyface's blaster, it only has 4 shots in the clip, and is 20% less accurate, with the trade-off being that you'll get mini crits when you shoot robots in the back. Now, on Giants, this has the same redundancy problem as the Criticola, where you'll usually be marking them, so this doesn't really come into play all that often. On small robots, this can actually be pretty good, and that's what saves it from the D tier, but as Scout, you're constantly running to pick up money, and you have a lot of plates spinning at once. That having to add on proper positioning on top of that, so you'll be consistently getting mini crits, I think that's just a little too much to juggle.
Well, Scout's all about positioning because the way he moves so fast.
To be put any
he can always be in and out of positions all the time he wants.
The Sandman is a very good weapon thanks to its Mark for Death upgrade. Being able to simultaneously slow and mark a target from any range is one of the greatest utilities in the entire game. It's the best weapon against Super Scouts, it can slow Sentry Busters for your medic, you can buy more balls for cheap, and even pick them up just like you can in casual. But this weapon's strength is also this weapon's weakness. The Mark for Death upgrade is 500 credits. On later waves, this isn't too big of a deal, but on early waves, when that is a massive percentage of your money, it's just way too expensive to be worth it. I mean, that's a resistance and a movement speed upgrade. That's a 25% damage and a jump height upgrade, just to make this thing function. And that's a trade-off that just isn't worth it the vast majority of the time. So, good on later waves, but just a little too expensive for it to be the meta. For some reason, the stock scattergun has gotten a reputation for being not that good in MvM. I don't know what these people are smoking. The stock scattergun is a very, very good weapon. It has
The
the
stock
highest
guns
clip
are all
size of
really
every
good
scatter
in
gun.
MvM.
It's extremely consistent. It doesn't have a bad secondary effect that you have to work around, and it holds its own very well against small and mid-sized robots. The biggest issue with stock is its sustained DPS is pretty lackluster compared to the other options, mostly due to the fact that it doesn't have an instant reload like some of Scout's other primaries, so you need to invest some credits in reload speed to even make it viable for damage. But that's a hurdle, you get over it, and when you do, it's a very good weapon. The reason why the Shortstop is so high on this list is because of its potential, plain and simple. This is the best scattergun for mid-range in the entire game, so being able to play at a slightly longer distance without a big DPS loss is very good. Like the double barrel guns, it reloads all of its shots at once, but unlike those scatter guns, it has 4 shots in the clip. This means that clip size upgrades are even more impactful, and couple that with firing speed upgrades, the Shortstop has the single best late game sustained DPS of any of the
that's something good to
making it
to
an
know.
amazing giant
Remember that,
killer
Rocker?
and tank buster.
He probably uses
but
it
although
anyway.
it's phenomenal in the late game, it won't be until the later waves where you have the credit investments to make this thing worthwhile. And that's why it's not meta. It's worse than the stock scattergun on early waves, but better on later ones, so I think it sits in the same tier.
Oh, okay. S
For
tier.
Scout's best melee, we have the Fan O' War, and it's pretty straightforward as to why. Mark for Death is the best utility in Scout's arsenal, and this is the only weapon in the game to have it for free. It gives mini crits to your entire team against any giants who get hit with this thing one time. And yeah, I know the effects of mini crits become less of a concern the higher your team's overall skill is, but even on high level teams, I still think it's the best. It's the cheapest and most consistent option in Scout's kits to apply the effect, and for that reason, it's very clearly number 1.
Mad
For
Milk,
the best
of course.
secondary, we have the Mad Milk. Honestly, this weapon is just absolutely fucking
We have
insane
Scout's
with
Cut.
how many support uses it has. By throwing it at a robot, preferably a giant, your entire team gets 60% of their DPS restored as health. This makes classes like Maximum Ramp Up Heavy or a Pyro with his on-demand crits nearly impenetrable, as the Mad Milk will quickly out-heal the robot's maximum damage output, a feat that sometimes a Medigun can't even accomplish. That on its own is good enough, but for some reason they decided to give the Mad Milk a slow upgrade for the incredibly cheap cost of 200 credits, and
Makes it even
holy
better.
shit is it ever worth it. You can slow Super Scouts to make sure they don't cap the bomb, slow Fist of Steel Heavies to make sure they don't cap the gate, slow Sentry Busters so your medic can farm Uber off of them in a much easier and faster way. It's probably the single most useful utility item in the entirety of MvM, and for that reason, it easily takes the top spot. And for the best
Soda
scattergun in
Popper.
the game by a significant margin, we have the Soda Popper. This weapon just has everything you want in a primary for Scout, and it becomes more and more clear just how good this thing is the more you use it. Because it reloads all of its shots at once and has an already fast firing speed, you only really have to upgrade the damage and clip size of the gun, allowing the Soda Popper to hit its maximum potential very early. You can also use an exploit to upgrade the gun's firing speed, despite the fact that there's no option for it, but I'll cover that another time. Point being, this weapon is the single best DPS weapon for Scout in the game on the vast majority of waves. Now, that alone would make it the best scattergun, but I haven't even talked about this weapon's signature ability.
Yeah.
By dealing damage, you generate your hype meter, which when filled, allows the Scout to jump 5 times, all of which stack with the jump height upgrade. This allows Scout to jump all the way from the floor to the catwalk on Manhattan, and you can act as a complete counter to swarms of projectiles flying at your team, since you can take aggro and force the robots to aim upwards at you. My point is, if you're playing MvM and you're using any other scattergun besides the Soda Popper, you're doing it wrong. And that's it for the Scout tier list. If you enjoyed the video and want to see more MvM content, be
So
sure
it goes Soda Popper, Mad Milk, and the Fan O' War. I think Rocker uses that in his own loadout. Anyway, so hope you guys enjoyed that. That's nice tips to know. Like this video, subscribe, guys. Of course, definitely click on the link to the original down in the description. Get down to Wheezy's channel, like the original, and sub to him over there. Oh, that was weird. Ugh. Tasted nasty. Anyway, I'll see you guys next time. Tune in every day for new content. Bye-bye.